So after using the iPhone 14 Pro for 3 months, I've given it to my wife to upgrade her 11 Pro, simply because I don't find it too enticing. I don't find that the upgrades are that worth it to me. You see, if you have an iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and iPhone X, you're going to see a bunch of upgrades across the board, and this is definitely going to be worth it for you. But if you're on an iPhone 12 Pro or a 13 Pro, trust me, Dynamic Island isn't a destination that is a must go right away. You can hold off and wait for the iPhone 15. So let's start off with Dynamic Island, because honestly, I believe it's just been so overhyped. Matter of fact, if you take away Dynamic Island as a feature, I don't think this iPhone gets that splash press attention that an iPhone gets year in and year out, simply because the rest of the upgrades aren't that huge. But Dynamic Island brought so much attention because it was new. It was a change that hadn't been done in a very long time. What otherwise would have been just a pill-shaped cutout at the top of your screen, like you see on many other smartphones, is actually a place that's very live. All your system alerts, like when you put your phone in silent or ring mode, when you connect AirPods, start timers. When you're on a phone call, you get these cool low waveform animations. Same thing with music. All your notifications smoothly just come out of there. It's a very live space, what otherwise would have just been dead. But is it something that is necessary? I don't think so. You see, as awesome as Dynamic Island is and how intuitive it is, for me, I just can't simply stop looking at it. When I'm playing games that are full screen, when I'm watching video content that's full screen, it just bothers me every now and then. I can't help but look over because there's a gap between the top of the display and the start of the pill. And I feel like it's just there. It makes me want to look at it and makes me aware that there is a cutout there. Whereas before, we just got used to that dead space at the top. So even though Dynamic Island got so much media attention, I mean, look at the Apple website and the phone's images. It's right there, dead in center. It's not Apple's hiding it from you. They want you to pay attention to Dynamic Island. I honestly just don't see it being a sole reason for me to change from an older iPhone to a newer one. Now let's jump to the cameras, because for the first time since the iPhone 7, they got a huge megapixel bump. 48 megapixels is the max megapixels that the camera can capture. But that is only with ProRAW. So when you are shooting in ProRAW, the phone will have more detail. The images are going to have lots of detail. But my only problem with ProRAW is the amount of space it takes. Honestly, I'm really happy with regular photos. And if I take regular images and I tweak them around a bit, I'm more than satisfied. So even though I played with it quite a bit when I first got the phone, I don't see it being something that makes me want to upgrade to this phone specifically, especially because the file sizes are so large. And if you don't have one of the models that has the 1 terabyte option or the 512 gigabyte option, photos are really going to take a lot of space. Even for someone like me, I use iCloud and I don't want to be taking ProRAW images in 48 megapixels because they're going to kill that space that I have. Now, if you are somebody that is mainly buying this phone for the camera because you want to shoot a lot of images, you want to shoot video and really get the most out of the camera, then yeah, this obviously is going to be the right choice for you. But I look at myself and the fact that I'm recording with the 14 Pro on a tripod right now, and I make all my videos with iPhones, dating back to the iPhone SE, which I had at the start of this channel. And I look at the content I'm able to create, I don't really see a need to have extra features. Honestly, if you know lighting and if you know how to work a camera and get the most out of your camera, you don't need the best of the best. So don't let yourself think that you have to have a 14 Pro or Pro Max to have a good camera. a lot of the content on this channel is shot with my 13 mini. All of the shots that you are seeing in this video are all done with this 13 mini, simply because I have a 13 mini and the 14 Pro. And those are the only two phones I have at the moment. So don't let yourself believe that you need the best Pro camera in order to make content, because I'm already doing it and I don't have a need to go out and spend extra money just so that I can have better camera features. Now, one thing I do love about the camera this year is the fact that they have a wider aperture. The lenses are huge and they're bringing in more light than on the 13 Pros. So when I still had my 13 Pro and 14 Pro, I could put them side by side in the same room with the same lighting conditions, and the 13 Pro would be telling me that it needs more light. More light would be better to get a better image quality. Whereas on the 14 Pro, it just doesn't say that. Same thing goes for when you go into nighttime shots. You're going to notice that certain times when you take a photo, it's actually darker outside, but in the photo that you take with the 14 Pro, you just wouldn't even realize that it's that dark. So in terms of light, and that is something that directly helps me. It's actually good for me because I don't have to bump up the brightness on these type of studio lights that I have when I'm shooting product shots with my 14 Pro. So when it comes to the camera, it is not a must-have for sure. I really don't see someone coming from a 12 Pro and 13 Pro and getting that much value. Again, if you are strictly buying these cameras simply because you want to shoot a lot of content, photo content, and you need the most out of the camera, then yeah, I guess this would be great for you. But I personally, despite shooting so much content here on YouTube, I don't see a need to be on the 14 Pro or Pro Max. Now let's move on to the display, because one nice addition is the ability of the 14 Pro and Pro Max to go to 2000 nits max when in direct sunlight. This is a real help. Now don't get me wrong, on the 13 Pro I could still see when I was outside. I didn't have trouble with visibility, but when this phone does kick into that max 2000 nits, sometimes when I'm driving and the sun's hitting at a certain angle, you'll see the phone screen go brighter. It is really nice. You're not going to have any issue in terms of visibility in direct sunlight. So if you are somebody that's outdoors a lot, then this is definitely a nice addition for you. Now here too, one thing to keep in mind is that the 2000 nits max is only for a certain amount of time. So for example, if you're walking outdoors and you're outdoors for a long period of time, when your phone detects that it's getting too warm or too hot, it will tone that display back down to the 1200 nits max. So don't let this feature make you believe that when outdoors for extended periods of time, you're just going to be able to have a phone that can stay bright at that 2000 nits max for extended periods of time, because that is not the case. I've seen it to where I'm driving and I'll have the sun hitting the phone at a certain angle and my windows are tinted on my car. But despite that, after a certain amount of time, it just kicks off and goes back to the 1200 nits max. Now, apart from your screen getting really bright, you still have ProMotion. So this was introduced with the 13 Pros to where your phone is able to scale its display to a faster or slower refresh rate depending on what you're doing. So let's say you're playing a high action or fast-paced action game, it's going to scale it up and it's going to be really, really smooth. But if you're just lightly scrolling, right, then you've got the ability to have the phone scale it down so it can conserve battery life. Also, you've got an always-on display. Now, at first, before the recent iOS 16.2 update, the always-on display was something I didn't like. It was too on. I mean, when I had the phone beside me and had the always-on display, it honestly looked like the lock screen was awake, and I constantly would look at my phone on the table to see that, oh, did I not lock my phone? So I immediately turned it off. Now with iOS 16.2, you can actually have it to where it just displays the clock and then has a dark wallpaper, and then you can choose whether you want to see notifications or not. But despite that, always on display is not something I'm crazy about. When I'm using my phone, every time I go to put it down, I put it face down because I don't want to have to look over to my phone or be distracted by the fact that it is constantly sending in notifications. So that to me personally doesn't matter, but if you are somebody that really wants an always on display, then there you go. There's another reason that you might actually want to upgrade to the 14 Pro. Now, the next thing I'd like to talk about is battery life. You see, with the always on display, when I was testing it in the beginning, it just wasn't great. It was actually the same, if not worse than the 13 Pro. So I quickly turned that off, and even with the update to the always on display, it's definitely going to use more battery life than you just having a phone that doesn't have an always on display. But regardless, I'm somebody that's used to getting through a day with the 13 mini. So if I can make it through a day on that, then the 14 Pro, I have no trouble making it through the day. I just noticed that it uses more battery life with the always on display. So I definitely wanted to mention that, because if you're going to be getting this and you don't really care about the always on display, then don't let it be a deciding factor as to making you upgrade to the 14 Pro or the 14 Pro Max. So last but not least, should you or should you not buy the iPhone 14 Pro? You see, like I said in the beginning, if you're on anything older than the 12 Pro, across the board, whether it's the camera, the display, bunch of software things like cinematic mode, these upgrades are going to be so worth it to you. But if you're somebody already on the 12 Pro or 13 Pro, these minor upgrades are not worth it, especially Dynamic Island. It is not something to get so excited about that you go out and buy the 14 Pro. We've been getting these minor upgrades between the 12 Pro and 13 Pro, and now to the 14 Pro, so the iPhone 15 should bring a bunch of irrelevant upgrades. So honestly, don't get caught up in the hype and wait and hold off for the iPhone 15, because I'm sure it's going to be great. If I take myself outside of this YouTube realm, I have to upgrade every year because I want to share my thoughts on the phone like I'm doing now. But if I take myself away from YouTube, then I wouldn't upgrade. I would have been perfectly fine with the 13 mini waiting around for it to get an upgrade in the coming years. So hold on to your money and wait for the iPhone 15, because that should definitely be worth it. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you taking the time to watch this video. If you've enjoyed it, do give it a thumbs up because it really helps me out. And most importantly, take care, and I will see you in the next video.